History is like a puzzle with missing pieces.
But sometimes the pieces aren't really missing.
They are just hidden. They are locked away in the basements of museums, buried in boring books that only experts read, and pushed aside as made-up stories. Because they don't fit the timeline. Because if they did fit, everything we think we know about human history would fall apart. In the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, England, there sits a small object. It is a clay prism about 20 centimeters tall, covered in neat typewriting.
It is called the Weld-Blundell prism, number WB 1923.444.
To most people, it just looks like a lump of baked mud.
But to those who know, it is the most dangerous document in all of human history.
It is the Sumerian King List. It was found in 1922 by Herbert Weld-Blundell's team in the ancient city of Lhasa. It is about 3,800 years old.
But the history it
records goes back much, much further.
It goes all the way back to the very beginning. The first line of the prism is simple, but it gives chills to any historian who dares to take it seriously. And the after kingship came down from heaven, came down, not grew, not was voted on, not was built up, slowly came down. That means power was moved from up above to down below. The list then names the first city on earth, Eridu, and the first king Anunnaki, and this is where the timeline breaks. According to the prism, King Anunnaki did not rule for 20 years.
He did not rule for 50 years.
The text says clearly in Eridu, Anunnaki became king.
He ruled for 28,800 years.
Stop. Let that number sink in.
28,800 years. One man, one rule.
That is longer than all of modern human history times 5. And he
was not alone. The list keeps going. Alalja ruled for 36,000 years.
Then Eridu fell and the kingship moved to Bad Tibira.
There, Enmenuana ruled for 43,200 years.
Enmengal-Ana ruled for 28,800 years.
Dumuzi the shepherd ruled for 36,000 years. Then the kingship moved to Larak.
Ensipatzit-Ana ruled for 28,800 years. Then to Sipa. And Enmen-Duar-Ana ruled for 21,000 years. And finally to Shurapak. Ubaratutu ruled for 18,600 years.
Add it all up.
8 kings, 5 cities, a total of 241,200 years of ruling. Mainstream archaeologists look at this prism and they panic.
They call it poetic exaggeration. They say the Sumerians counted months as years, a theory that falls apart when you
do the math and apply it to the later kings on the same list. They say it's just a symbol for the Golden Age. But the Sumerians were obsessed with math.
They invented the base 60 number system, which we still use today, 60 seconds in a minute, and 360 degrees in a circle. They were like expert accountants and skywatchers. They did not make mistakes with numbers. When they wrote 28,800, they meant 2880.so. We are left with two choices. Option A, the Sumerians, the people who invented writing and law. What?
Liars who made up a fake history for no reason. Option B, they were writing down the rules of beings who were not human. These 8 kings ruled before the flood. The list makes a clear separation. After the reign of Ubaratutu, the prism says, then the flood swept over. This creates a clear before and after.
The world before the flood was the age of the long reigns. The world after the flood was the
age of the short reigns.
Why? What happened in that disaster that changed how long the kings lived?
If we accept the Anunnaki theory, the idea that these kings were actually alien or otherworldly beings, the numbers make perfect sense. A being comes from a planet with a different Ur-Asaya, which is 3,600 Earth years. Their sense of time is different. To Anunnaki, a reign of 28,800 years is only 8 SARS, 8 trips around his home world. To him, it was just a normal term in office.
But to the humans watching him, whole generations were born and died. Kingdoms rose and fell. Forests turned to deserts, and the king was still there, unchanged, not aging, eternal. This is what created the idea of the divine right of kings.
Why do humans bow to royalty?
Why are we so fascinated by royal blood?
Because in the beginning, the kings really were gods.
They were stronger, they were smarter, they were immortal. To disobey Anunnaki was like disobeying the universe itself. He wasn't just a political leader.
He was the link to heaven. He was the one who brought technology, law, and civilization. But here is the mystery that this series will dig into. The king list shows the public rulers,
the ones who sat on the throne, wore the crown, and held the staff.
But experts in genetics and ancient secret history think there was a shadow line.
A bloodline that did not rule out in the open.
A bloodline that was never written on the clay prisms for regular people to see when the flood came.
The text says the kingship came down from heaven again.
But the reigns were shorter.
The first king after the flood, Tusha of Kish, ruled for only 1,200 years.
Later, Gilgamesh ruled for just 126 years.
And eventually, the kings became regular men who lived for 70 or 80 years.
The divine blood was getting weaker.
Earth was taking over.
The gods were slowly turning into men. Or were they? What if the
true 412 bloodline did not disappear?
What if it just went underground?
What if the weakening was just a disguise? What if there is a 13th bloodline, a direct, unbroken family line, all the way back to Alulim that refused to mix with regular humans? A bloodline that kept the original code inside them. A bloodline that still sees a human life as something as short as a mayfly's. A bloodline that is still ruling today. Not from the throne of Eridu, but from the shadows of the world's big banking families. To understand who owns the world today, we must first understand who owned it at the beginning. And to do that, we must go back to Eridu, the mound of creation, the place where the first kingship came down.
Why did they choose that spot? What was buried under the great tower? And why, even today, is the site of ancient Eridu in southern
Iraq a restricted military zone guarded not by scientists, but by soldiers?
The prism is not a myth.
It is a receipt. It is a record of a transfer of ownership. The earth was claimed 241,200 years ago, and that claim has never been given back. In the next part, we will look closely at the 8 immortals.
We will look at their specific achievements. We will ask who was Dumuzi the shepherd and why. Is he the only one who became a dying and rising god? And we will explore the terrifying possibility that these kings never actually died. They just went to sleep and waited. The history, you know, is like a screensaver. Touch the mouse. Wake up the machine. The real file is loading. Imagine a world with no history. A world of silence. A world of darkness. And then contact. The Sumerian King List says, in Eridu, Alulim became king. It does not say he was born.
It does not say he fought a war.
It says he appeared. He is the first. He is the one who started it all.
He is the model for every king who ever lived.
He was riding a Shem, a flying sky vehicle.
He came down to the muddy banks of the Euphrates River.
He built Eridu. Eridu was not a simple village of mud huts.
Archaeology tells us it was built on fresh, untouched sand. There was no Stone Age lay beneath it. It appeared fully formed.
It was a base. In the Sumerian language, Eridu means house built far away or guidance place. It was mission control. Alulim ruled here for 28,800 years.
What can a being do in 28,000 years? He shaped the land of Mesopotamia.
He drained the swamps. He brought farming.
He brought laws. He wasn't just a king.
He was a planetary builder. Then the kingship moved. It went to Bad-Tibira. Here, Enmenu-Ana
took the throne.
His reign is the longest in all of recorded history, 43,200 years. That is exactly 12 SARs. 12 trips of the planet Nibiru around the sun. Bad-Tibira means wall of the copper worker. This was the metal working center. This is where they refined the gold. This is where they built the technology.
Enmenu-Ana was the master of the workers, the head of the mining operation. Under his rule, the Igigi, the worker class, did the labor.
The humans were made and shaped. The planet's basic systems were set up, then Tularak, ruled by Ensipatsid-Ana for
28,800 years.
Larak is said to mean seeing the bright glow. Experts think this was the signal city, the navigation hub, the place that guided ships coming down from space. The king here wasn't a politician. He was more like an air traffic controller than Sipa, ruled by Enmenu-Ana for 21,000 years.
Sipa means bird city. This was the spaceport.
This is where the eagles landed. This is where the bond of heaven and earth, a special restricted area, was located. It was the most guarded zone on the planet, like a green zone. Only the high priest and the pilots were allowed there.
It is said that Enmenu-Ana was taken up to heaven to learn the secrets of the gods like an early version of the biblical Enoch, and finally to Shuruppak, ruled by Urartutu for 18,600 years.
Shuruppak was the medical center, the city of healing. This is where the genetic experiments were finished. This is where the Ark was built. And this is where the rule of the 8 immortals came to an end. But there is one name on the list that stands out, a name that breaks the pattern.
Dumuzi the shepherd. He ruled in Bad-Tibira for 36,000 years.
He is the only one of the 8 kings who became a major god in later religions.
The Babylonians called him Tammuz.
The women of Jerusalem cried for him in the book of Ezekiel.
Why? Why mourn a king who died 400,000 years ago?
The myth says Dumuzi was the lover of Inanna, also called Ishtar. But Inanna was not a kind goddess. She was the goddess of war and desire.
She was ambitious.
She was ruthless. The texts say she sent Dumuzi to the underworld to take her place. She sacrificed him.
Was this just a story about the changing seasons?
Or was it a political murder?
Was Dumuzi the first victim of a fight inside the Anunnaki royal family? Did he try to marry into the 13th bloodline, the pure strain?
And was he killed for it? His death was so terrible, so important, that it left a scar on the memory of all humanity.
He became the model for the dying god, the king who is betrayed by the queen, the shepherd who is eaten by wolves. These 8 kings were not just rulers. They were the founding fathers of the system.
They built the walls.
They wrote the code. They set the clock.
They created the me-pronounced May, the tablets of destiny.
These were not stone tablets with rules written on them.
They were technology devices, like data crystals. They held the programs for civilization, kingship, priesthood, war, music, writing, and more.
Owning the me meant owning the power to run the whole program. For 241,200 years, the system worked.
The gold flowed. The humans obeyed. The cities burst with energy. The golden age was real, but it was a cage. And like all cages, it eventually got too small for those trapped inside. The human population grew very fast. The noise started
to rise.
And the 13th bloodline, the hidden rulers who watched from behind the throne, made a decision. The experiment was over. It was time to wipe the hard drive clean. In the next part, we will explore the Great Silence. We will look at the moment the kings left, the moment the ships lifted off from Sleepl, and the moment the sky went dark over Shuruppak. The flood was not an accident.
It was a foreclosure. There is a line in the Sumerian King List that is more scary than anything in a horror movie.
5 words. Then the flood swept over. It doesn't describe the screaming.
It doesn't describe the drowning cities. It doesn't describe the panic. It is cold, calm, and final. For 241,200 years, the 8 kings had ruled.
They had built the world.
Before the flood, a worldwide network of pyramids, stargates, and science labs.
And then, in one giant disaster, everything was wiped clean.
The me, the tablets of technology, were packed away.
The Shems, the rockets, lifted off from Sleepl, carrying the pure-blooded Anunnaki up into space.
And humanity was left to drown.
In the mud. Why? The Epic of Atrahasis tells us the truth that the Bible hides. Enlil, the commander, didn't drown us because we were bad people.
He drowned us because we were too loud.
The human population had exploded.
We were having babies.
Too fast.
We were getting too smart. We were waking up. Our noise, our awareness was disturbing the gods. So they started the Great Silence, a total reset of the whole planet, like wiping a hard drive clean when the waters went down. The text says, after the flood had swept over and the kingship had come down from heaven. Notice it says the same thing again.
The kingship came down again, but this time, things were different. The rules had changed. The first king of the new era was Jusha of Kish. He ruled for 1,200 years.
A long time, yes, but compared to Alulim's 28,800 years, it is a tiny fraction. The next kings ruled for 900 years, then 600, then 140, and finally, Gilgamesh ruled for only 126 years.
What happened? Why did the divine blood suddenly lose its
power? Mainstream science says it is just myth slowly turning into history. But the Anunnaki theory suggests something much darker, a genetic downgrade. Before the flood, the human body was fully open.
We had access to our full DNA. We lived for hundreds of years, like Methuselah in the Bible.
We were built to be junior partners to the gods. But after the flood, a decision was made.
Never again.
Never again would humans be allowed to come close to the level of their masters. So the biological clock was reset. The protective caps on our DNA called telomeres were shortened. The so-called junk DNA was switched off. A lifespan was hard-coded to a maximum of 120 years.
Genesis 6:3, just long enough to grow up, have kids, and work in the fields.
Or the mines, but not long enough to learn, not long enough to remember, not long enough to challenge the throne. The kings after the flood, the ones listed on the prism, were half-breeds.
They were the demigods, the third god, 1/3.
Human, like Gilgamesh. They were powerful, yes,
but they were mortal. They died. They rotted. They were buried in the fancy tombs of yore, surrounded by their poisoned servants. And the people mourned them because they were the last fading connection to the Golden Age. But here is the secret. The King List records the public rulers, the managers, the faces that everyone could see.
But do you really think the immortals just vanished? Do you think beings who mastered space travel and genetics just died out because it rained?
No, the pure Anunnaki bloodline, the ones who lived for 36,000 years, did not mix with them.
Humans after the flood.
They pulled back.
They went into the shadows.
They created a secret bloodline.
While the kings of Kish and the kings of Uruk played their parts on the public stage, dying and fighting and building walls, the 13th bloodline stayed hidden, pure, unbroken, and immortal. They became the secret chiefs, the hidden hand. They realized that ruling out in the open was dangerous.
It made them targets. It was better to rule from behind a curtain, to put a puppet on the throne, a mortal king who would take the blame, fight the wars, and die, while the true king whispered in his ear. This explains why the priesthood suddenly appeared.
Before the flood, the king was the priest. He spoke directly to Anu.
After the flood, a new layer showed up: the high priest, the magician, the advisor, the figure standing
behind the throne, holding the staff, reading the stars, explaining the will of the gods.
This was the new way of control. The 13th bloodline moved from the palace to the temple, from the throne room to the money room. The Great Silence wasn't the end of the Anunnaki rule. It was the beginning of their hidden rule. They stopped being our kings and became our bankers. In the next part, we will expose the 13th bloodline. We will look at the specific genetic marker that makes them different from the rest of humanity.
We will ask, why did the ancient dragon courts of Egypt and Sumer refuse to marry outside their own family?
Why is incest the biggest taboo for
regular people, but the most important duty for them?
And what is the starfire they consume to keep their blood from fading?
History tells us there are 12 tribes of Israel, 12 Olympians, 12 apostles, 12 signs of the zodiac.
The number 12 represents the circle, the clock, and the completed cycle of humanity. But in the center of the clock, holding the hands, is the number 13. The 13 is the master number, and the 13th bloodline is the master race. We have shown that. The public kings died, but the secret kings pulled back. Who were they?
To understand them, we must look at the symbols they left behind. In every ancient culture, the highest authority was not a lion.
It was not an eagle. It was a serpent. The pharaohs of Egypt wore the uraeus, the cobra, on their forehead. The emperors of China sat on the dragon throne and claimed they came from the dragon kings. The kings of India claimed they came from the Nagas, the serpent gods. The druids of Europe called themselves adders, snakes. Even the word king in ancient Sumerian is connected to a root that means great serpent.
Why? Why did the whole world worship a cold-blooded reptile?
Because the 2 for 1. 200-year-old rulers were not mammals. Or at least, they didn't start that way.
The Anunnaki, especially the clan of Enki, the scientist, were the serpent house.
They had a biology that was very different from the primates they created. They lived for a very long time. They could read minds. They were the shining ones.
And they knew a terrifying truth about biology. Mixing weakens. If a god mixes his DNA with a human, the child is a hero or a giant, what the Bible calls a Nephilim.
Powerful. Yes, but mortal. The god gene is weaker than the human gene.
If you keep mixing with humans, after just 3 generations, the powers disappear.
The mind reading fades. The lifespan drops to 80 years. The glow goes out. You become just another smart human. To keep the power, to keep the control, you must keep the blood pure. This is where the 13th bloodline comes from. While the 12 lines of regular royalty, the public faces, were allowed to mix, marry, and die, the 13th line refused.
They set the strictest rule in history, the rule of royal marriage within the family. We look at pharaohs marrying their sisters, or the Rothschilds marrying their cousins, and we think it's gross.
We think it is genetic suicide.
But for them, it was genetic survival. They weren't trying to keep the money in the family.
They were trying to keep the frequency in the blood. They were trying to stop their alien DNA from being overwritten by the wild, chaotic DNA of the Earth primate. This bloodline traces back to one figure in the Sumerian texts, not Enlil, the one who hated humans, but Enki, the lord of the earth, the serpent in the garden. He started the Order of the Dragon.
His descendants, the 13th line, are the keepers of the Grail Code.
They are the ones who have the activated junk DNA we talked about earlier.
They don't need technology to control us.
They can do it with their minds, because their blood is different. literally. This brings us to the most controversial secret of the elite, the starfire. In the ancient temples, the high priestesses were not just praying, they were producers. The Anunnaki elite consumed a substance called starfire or gold of the gods. It was a mix of single atom gold for the nervous system and the special blood hormone-rich blood of the pure bloodline females. This was the drink of immortality.
It kept their pineal glands large. It kept their skin glowing. It kept their connection to their hive mind working.
Without it, they would fall. They would become like us. The 13th bloodline is addicted to this substance.
They are biological vampires feeding on their own group to keep their hold on this world.
They are the hidden hand behind history. They are the Merovingians of France, who claim to come from a sea creature. They are the black nobility of Venice. They are the banking families of London and Frankfurt. They do not care about countries. They do not care about wars. They care about only one thing, keeping the bloodline going.
Because they know that if the line breaks, if the blood gets too weak, the connection to the gods is lost.
And they will be left alone on a planet of 8 billion angry people who used to be their slaves. But biology is tricky. Nature hates a closed
loop.
And even the 13th bloodline is failing.
Their bodies are breaking down. Madness is creeping in. Look at the history of royal insanity. They are desperate.
And that desperation brings us to the next chapter, to the medical proof that makes them different from us,
to the blood type that shouldn't exist, Rh negative.
Why does a mother's body try to fight off her own baby? Why is this blood type
found almost only in the royal bloodlines? Is it a mutation, or is it the mark of the serpent?
In the next part, we enter the lab. We will expose the genetic glitch,
the proof that the blue bloods are not from here,
and why they are hunting for you if you carry the marker. Blood is not just a liquid.
It is a record. It is an archive of every single ancestor who came before you. If we all evolved from the same original soup, if we all came from the same African
ape, our blood should be able to mix. Nature does not make basic mistakes.
A donkey can mate with a horse to make a mule, and the mother does not fight of the baby. A lion can mate with a tiger.
But in humans, there is a glitch so big that it shocked scientists when they first found it in 1940.
It is called the rhesus factor. When scientists Carl Landsteiner and Alexander Wiener were studying the blood of the rhesus macaque monkey, they found a specific protein on the surface of the red blood cells. They called it the Rh factor. If you have this protein, you are Rh positive. You carry the mark of the monkey.
You are connected to the original evolution of Earth.
85% of all humans are Rh positive. They are of this world. But 15% of people
do not have it.
They are Rh negative. They are missing the monkey gene. Where did they come from? You cannot clone a rhesus monkey and get an Rh negative baby.
It is biologically impossible. Evolution means things are slowly added or changed over time. But Rh negative appeared suddenly, about 35,000 years ago, mostly in the Basque region of Spain and among the royal families of Europe.
It didn't slowly evolve. It was inserted. The proof is in the womb. There is a scary condition called hemolytic
disease of the newborn. It happens when an Rh negative mother gets pregnant by an Rh positive father.
Her body looks at the baby, her own child, and scans its blood.
It sees the Rh positive protein and treats it like a virus, like a foreign attacker.
Her immune system sends a storm of antibodies to attack the baby's blood.
It tries to stop the pregnancy. Think about that. Why would a mother's body try to
kill her own baby?
Because the baby is not of her kind.
It is a rejection, a sign that two different species are incompatible.
The Earth-based Rh positive and the otherworldly Rh negative. The Anunnaki theory says the Rh negative gene is the mark of the gods.
It is the Grail blood, the Sangreal. It is what's left of the 13th bloodline trying to stay alive in a world full of hybrids.
The pure Anunnaki of the 13th line were likely copper-based life forms, not iron-based. In biology, iron-based blood, hemoglobin turns red when it gets oxygen. Copper-based blood, hemocyanin, found in octopuses and crabs, turns blue. This is the literal origin of the term blue blood for royalty. It wasn't a poetic term for nobility.
It was a memory of their actual biology. The Rh negative humans we see today are the diluted descendants of this line.
They carry the weaker gene, and they also carry the traits of their ancestors. Studies show that Rh negative people often share certain characteristics: lower body temperature, lower blood pressure, extra vertebrae, high IQ, sensitivity to sunlight, and psychic ability. They are the sensitive ones, the mediums, the ones who get abducted. Why are they abducted?
Why do degrees the worker drones of the Anunnaki specifically target Rh-negative families for genetic collection? Because they are trying to
fix the bloodline. The 13th bloodline is dying.
Earth's forces are overwriting their code. They are desperate for the original pure source material. This explains why the ancient dragon court was so obsessed with family trees. They weren't just being snobby, they were running a breeding program. They knew that if they married an Rh-positive human, the serpent gene would fade.
The mind reading would vanish. The connection to the hive mind would break. So they married
their sisters.
They married their cousins.
They kept the circle closed, because to them, the rest of humanity is not just a different class.
We are a different species, but the glitch is spreading. The monkey blood is dominant. The god blood is weaker. Nature is winning, and the 13th bloodline is terrified.
They are losing their hold.
That is why they are moving to the next phase.
If they cannot stay on top through biology, they will do it through technology. In the next part, we will explore the black nobility. We will trace the surviving Rh-negative families from the temples of Sumer all the way to the canals of Venice.
We will see how they traded their crowns for account books, and how they built a money system designed to harvest the one thing they can no longer make on their own energy. Kings used to sit on tall thrones where everyone could see them. They wore gold. They held staffs. They demanded to be worshipped.
But being visible is a weakness.
If the peasants know where you live, they can burn your house down. If the people know your face, they can cut off your head. The 13th bloodline
learned this lesson the hard way. They saw the revolutions. They saw the guillotines.
They saw the anger of the hybrid humans.
So they made a plan.
They vanished. They didn't disappear from the earth. They disappeared from the history books. They moved their base from the temples of the east to the swamps of the west to a city built on water, where secrets could be drowned.
Venice, historians
tell us Venice was built by refugees running from Attila the Hun. But the records of the black nobility tell a different story. They say the bloodline arrived from the sea, from Phoenicia, from Troy, from Sumer. They brought with them the Chaldean magic of Babylon, the magic of making money from nothing. Interest, banking, debt. They built the oligarchy.
Families like
the Medici, the Orsini, the Colonna, the Guelphs, and the Ghibellines.
They were called the black nobility, nobilt nera, not because of their skin, but because of their methods. They got rich by funding both sides of every war, by trading in slaves, by poisoning their enemies. Look at the symbol of Venice.
The winged lion of St. Mark.
It holds a book.
It has wings. Where have we seen that before? In Babylon. In Sumer.
The Lamassu, the winged lion man.
The symbol didn't change. Only the location did. The Anunnaki elite figured out that gold is heavy, but debt is lighter than air.
If you control the debt, you control the king.
You don't need to wear a crown if you own the man who does. This was the great transfer. The 13th bloodline stopped being gods and became merchants. They created a system where they could harvest the energy of humanity labor without ever showing their faces.
They invented the corporation, a legal thing that has the rights of a person, but no soul to save and no body to put in jail. It is the perfect container for an immortal being. A corporation can live for 500 years. It can consume, destroy, and profit, and it never dies. It is like a golem from Venice. The bloodline moved north, like a parasite looking for a bigger host.
They moved to Amsterdam with the Dutch East India Company, then to London, the city
of London, and finally to the New World Wall Street. But they never lost who they were. They kept the blood pure. They kept the family records locked in the Vatican archives and in private vaults in Switzerland. Have you ever wondered why the City of London is its own separate state inside London?
The Queen of England cannot enter the City of London without
permission from the Lord Mayor.
She has to bow and ask to enter.
Why?
Because the city is the temple of the 13th line.
It is the financial Vatican.
The Windsors, the public royals, are just the mascots. They wave from the balcony. But the black nobility, the hidden royals, run the books. They are the ones who decide when to crush the economy, when to start a pandemic, when to launch a world war. They see us not as citizens, but as collateral.
In maritime law, the law of the sea, from Venice, a human is treated as a vessel lost at sea. When you are born, a birth certificate is issued. You are stock in their exchange.
Your labor, your taxes, your energy, it all flows up the pyramid to the very top.
And who sits at the top?
The families who carry the Rh-negative marker. The families who trace their line all the way back to the Dragon Court of Enki. They are still here. They are not hiding in caves.
They are hiding in plain sight.
They wear suits instead of robes. They hold tablets instead of stone.
But the eyes, Those cold, calculating eyes haven't changed in 241,000 years. In the next part, we will explore the DNA code.
We will look at the scientific way they control us. Why is 97% of our DNA called junk?
Is it trash, or is it locked up? Did they lock our genetic potential so we would stay good workers, while they kept the key for themselves?
Open the hood of a Ferrari, you expect to see an engine that is clean, efficient,
and powerful. Every wire has a purpose.
Every hose connects to something.
Now, open the hood of a human cell. What scientists found when they mapped the human genome in 2003 was shocking. They expected to find a neat, efficient code.
Instead,
they found a junkyard. Only 2% to 3% of our DNA actually makes proteins, the building blocks of the body. These are called exons.
The other 97% doesn't seem to do anything. These are called introns.
Scientists first called it junk DNA. They assumed it was leftover evolutionary trash, old viruses, and broken code from millions of years of trial
and error. But nature does not create junk. Nature is ruthlessly efficient.
If you have a body part you don't use, you lose it over time like a tail.
So why would the human body spend huge amounts of energy copying billions of lines of code?
Every single time a cell divides, if that code did nothing.
It wouldn't, unless the code does do something.
Unless it is encrypted. The Anunnaki theory offers a chilling explanation. The 97% is not junk. It is the God DNA.
It is the genetic inheritance of the Anunnaki themselves, the genes for long life, mind reading, cell regeneration, and super immunity.
But it has been zipped up and locked. When Enki created the Adamu, the first human, he faced a problem. He needed a worker that was smart enough to take orders, use tools, and speak. But he couldn't make a worker that was too smart.
If the
slave had the same lifespan as the master, if the slave had the same psychic power as the master, the slave would eventually rebel.
A slave who lives for 10,000 years collects too much knowledge.
He becomes a rival. So the Anunnaki performed a
genetic downgrade. They didn't remove the superior genes, because the genome is like a complex house of cards. Pull out the wrong piece and the whole thing falls.
Instead, they installed a block.
They used a process called methylation, a chemical cap that
attaches to the DNA strand and stops it from being read. They silenced the God genes.
They switched off the mind reading. They switched off the super immune system. And most importantly, they turned off the telomerase, an enzyme that protects the tips of our chromosomes. Telomeres are the protective caps at the end of your chromosomes.
Think of them like the plastic tips at the end of a shoelace.
Every
time your cells divide, the telomere gets a little shorter.
When the telomere runs out, the DNA starts to fall apart. The cell stops dividing.
You get old.
You die. The Anunnaki have an enzyme called telomerase that constantly rebuilds the cap. That is the biological secret of their immortality. Enki gave us the gene for telomerase.
It is right there in our junk DNA, but he switched it off.
Genesis 6:3 records this moment. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. This was not a prophecy.
It was a factory setting.
It was a software update.
They hard-coded a kill switch into our biology.
To make sure we would die before we could figure out who we really are. Why 120 years? It is a calculated number. It is long enough to reach adulthood, have children, raise the next generation, and work in the mines or fields for 60 years. But
it is short enough to stop the collecting of forbidden knowledge.
Just as a human begins to understand the patterns of history, just as they start to wake up, their body fails, their brain slows down, and they die. The next generation starts from zero, with no memory of the past.
It is the perfect reset. The 13th Bloodline, who live for thousands of years, or who pass their awareness through family lines, play the long game. They watch us live and die like mayflies.
To them, a human life is a disposable battery. When the charge runs out, you throw it away and put in a new one. But here is the danger for the 13th Bloodline.
Junk DNA is not dead.
It is just sleeping. It reacts to frequencies.
Russian biophysicists like Dr. Jotika Joyev have proven that DNA can be reprogrammed by words and sound.
Junk DNA acts like a language antenna. It follows the rules of grammar and syntax. This suggests that the spells of the ancient priesthoods, the chanting, the mantras, the vibrational languages like Sanskrit and Sumerian, were not superstition.
They were code writers.
They were attempts to use sound to vibrate the chemical
caps of the DNA, to unlock the junk, to turn God mode back on. The 13th Bloodline fears this more than anything.
If the human race ever unlocks the 97%, we instantly become their equals.
Actually, we become superior because we have something they don't have: hybrid vitality. We have the raw animal strength of the earth primate combined with the intelligence
Of the star gods,
we are the super soldier prototype.
and a super soldier that breaks its leash is the most dangerous thing in the universe. This explains the modern obsession with keeping the population in a constant state of stress.
Why fill the environment with fear? Why calcify the pineal gland?
Why introduce chemicals that mess with the genome? The theory says that the Anunnaki, or their human puppets, the elite, are terrified of a spontaneous awakening. The sun is changing. Cosmic radiation is increasing.
High energy gamma waves are hitting the earth. These particles can naturally unzip DNA. We are evolving even with the blocks.
So the gods are panicking. They are frantically trying to patch the software. They are trying to add more locks to the system, because they know that inside every person they dismiss, inside every strand of so-called junk DNA, there is a sleeping king waiting to wake up. We are not a failed experiment. We are bottled one.
We are a genie that has been stuffed into a very small lamp that has strand DNA.
But the lamp is cracking, and the 13th bloodline knows that once the genie is out, it doesn't go back in. In the next chapter, we will explore the secret societies. We will look at the groups created to guard this genetic secret. We will see how the Knights Templar found something under the Temple of Solomon that wasn't gold.
They found the family records and they used it to blackmail the Pope. If the 13th
bloodline went underground, who guarded the door? Who kept the records? Who managed the money? Who silenced the witnesses? Enter the secret societies. We have all heard of the Knights Templar, the Freemasons, the Priory of Sion, and the Illuminati. Regular history tells us they were religious groups, or unions for stone workers, or clubs for eccentric gentlemen. But when you look at them through the lens of the Sumerian bloodline, their true purpose becomes terrifyingly clear. They were not clubs, they were bodyguards. Let's go back to 1118 AD, Jerusalem. 9 French knights arrived at the holy city. They called themselves the poor fellow soldiers of Christ.
They went straight to King Baldwin II and asked for one specific thing.
They didn't ask for a castle. They didn't ask for land. They asked for permission to live in the ruins of the Temple of Solomon. The king agreed.
For 9 years, these knights did not patrol the roads. They did not protect pilgrims. They did not fight Muslims.
They dug under the Temple Mount, under the Holy of Holies. What were they looking for?
The Ark of the Covenant? Gold? No, the Anunnaki elite had removed the technology long before.
The Templars arrived. They were looking for archives. They were looking for the family records hidden by the Jewish priesthood before the Romans destroyed everything in 70 AD.
And they found them.
They found the Sangreal. We translate this today as the Holy Grail.
We think it is a cup that caught the blood of Jesus.
But in Old French, Sangreal spreads differently: Sangreal, royal blood. The Templars found proof of the 13th bloodline. They found marriage certificates, birth records, and maps showing where the descendants of the Sumerian kings had moved into the royal families of Europe, the Merovingians. They found the proof that the divine right to rule was biologically real. Armed with this secret, the Templars went back to Europe, and instantly they became the richest organization on earth. They didn't find treasure.
They found leverage.
They blackmailed the Vatican.
We know who the real kings are.
We know the church is an impostor.
Give us freedom. The Pope gave them extraordinary power. They paid no taxes.
They answered to no king.
They invented modern banking, the check system.
They built the Gothic cathedrals using sacred geometry and sound science they brought back from the East. They were the first worldwide corporation, serving the 13th bloodline, but they flew too close to the sun.
They began to worship the source
of their power. They were accused of worshipping a head called Baphomet. Historians say Baphomet was a demon.
But look at the image.
It is half male, half female. It has wings. It makes the as above, so below hand sign.
It is a representation of Anunnaki wisdom, the union of opposites, the knowledge of genetics.
King Philip IV of France, a puppet who owed them money, decided to strike.
On Friday the 13th, October 1307, the purge began.
The Templars were burned at the stake, but the secret survived. The Templars who escaped went to Scotland and Portugal.
They went underground and came back out as the Freemasons.
Why Masons? Why builders?
Because the Anunnaki were the great architects.
The G inside the Masonic compass doesn't just stand for geometry or God. It stands for the generative principle. It stands for gene. The Masons are the keepers of the builder code and knowledge of how to create civilization according to the Anunnaki blueprint.
Solomon's temple is not just a building, it is a metaphor for the human body.
The temple of the soul, built perfectly with the DNA strands, the pillars of Jachin and Boaz fully activated. And then there is the Priory of Sion.
Their only purpose was to protect the Merovingian bloodline, the long-haired kings of France. Legend says the founder of the Merovingians was fathered by a sea beast while his mother was swimming. A sea beast, a dragon, a serpent Enki. The priory protects the living descendants of the 13th line. They make sure the blood doesn't die out. They make sure the grail is never lost. These societies are the immune system of the elite. They sort through the candidates.
They test the bloodlines. If you are a high-level politician, a judge, or a general, you are brought into these groups not to learn magic tricks, but to be tested to see if you will serve the agenda, to see if you are willing to protect the secret of the blood. But secrets are hard to keep in the digital age. The archives under the Vatican are leaking. The excavations under the Temple Mount are being exposed, and the 13th bloodline knows that their bodyguards can no longer protect them from the truth. The widow's son is crying out for help, but there is no one left to answer. In the next part, we will explore the blood rituals. We will explain why they need the blood not as a symbol, but biologically. Why does the Queen carry a red box?
Why is hemophilia the royal disease?
And what really happens behind the closed doors of the castles when the lights go out?
Blood is the currency of life.
We donate it.
We spill it in war.
We swear oaths on it. But for the 13th bloodline, blood is not just a liquid. It is food. It is data.
And it is the only thing keeping them alive throughout history. The gods demanded blood sacrifice. Why would an all-powerful creator of the universe really need a dead goat or a human heart to be happy? Of course not.
The beings demanding
sacrifice were not creators.
They were consumers. The Anunnaki elite, specifically the Enki faction, discovered that life was energy, called Lach, and the hormonal signature of a living being are concentrated in the blood at the moment of death.
Adrenaline, cortisol, DMT.
This mix acts as a powerful boost for a biology that is breaking down in Earth's atmosphere. But the 13th bloodline had a problem. The longer they stayed on Earth, the more their biology started to fail. The starfire, the single atom gold, was not enough. They needed to concentrate the serpent gene.
So they turned inward. They pushed extreme family marriages, and nature
punished them. Or did it? Look at the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, the Windsors. Look at the Romanovs.
They suffered from a specific terrible condition called hemophilia, the royal disease. Medical books say it is a genetic defect caused by close family marriage. The blood doesn't clot. A simple cut can kill you. But the Anunnaki theory says
it is not a defect.
It is a reverting. It is the body trying to go back to a copper-based blood system, which doesn't clot the same way as iron-based blood, while trapped inside a human iron-based body.
The bleeders were the ones with the most
alien DNA. They were the purest.
And that is why they were protected. That is why Rasputin was brought in to heal young Alexei Romanov using hypnosis and magnetic energy to stabilize the boy's alien biology. This obsession with blood also explains the red box.
It is an open secret in intelligence circles that high-ranking members of the British royal family travel with a red box containing their own supply of blood.
The official story is that it's just in case of an emergency transfusion.
But why can't they accept regular blood? Because the mixing
is fatal.
If you put Rh-positive monkey blood into an Rh-negative royal body, the reaction is catastrophic. The immune system collapses.
The glow stops. They must keep the purity of the vessel at all costs. This also throws a scary light on the legend of vampires. Vlad the Impaler Dracula was a member of the Order of the Dragon, Societas Draconistorum. He was not a movie monster. He was an initiate. He knew the secret of the blood.
Was the drinking of blood a twisted memory of the ancient Anunnaki rituals? Or was it a medical necessity for the 13th bloodline during times of low energy? There is a condition called porphyria.
It makes the skin pale.
It makes the gums pull back, making teeth look like fangs.
It makes the person extremely sensitive to sunlight.
And the only old-time treatment was drinking blood to replace the heme. Porphyria is common in the royal families.
King George III, the Mad King, had it. Was he a vampire? No, he was a breaking down Anunnaki hybrid running low on fuel. The rituals we see today, the red shoes of the Pope, the red carpets for celebrities, the wine of the Eucharist. This is my blood. These are all echoes of this biological truth. The blood is the life.
And for the 13th bloodline, your blood is the battery. They have built a society designed to drain it through war, through stress, through the medical system. They are harvesting the planet, but the harvest is getting harder.
Human blood is changing.
It is becoming full of microplastics, vaccines, and poisons.
The food is contaminated, and the elite are getting sick. You can see it in their faces. The drooping eyes, the erratic behavior.
They are starving.
And a starving predator is the most dangerous kind. They need a new energy source.
And they are looking toward a place where the pure ones have been sleeping for 12,000 years, waiting for a wake-up call. In the next part, we will explore the Antarctic Arc.
We will leave the palaces of Europe and fly to the frozen continent.
Why did Patriarch Kirill, John Kerry, and Buzz Aldrin all rush to Antarctica in 2016? What did they find under the ice? And is the head office of the 13th Bloodline finally opening its doors?
If you want to hide a secret, you don't put it in a safe.
A safe tells people something valuable is inside.
You put it in a desert.
You put it in a place so dangerous, so far away, and so deadly that no human would ever go there voluntarily.
You put it under 2 miles of ice. Antarctica. We are told it is a barren wasteland home to penguins and climate scientists.
But look at the maps. In 1513, the Ottoman Admiral Piri Reis drew a map of the world.
It showed the coastlines of South
America and Africa with amazing accuracy.
But it also showed something impossible. It showed the coastline of Antarctica without ice. It showed rivers. It showed mountains. It showed a green, livable continent. How could a sailor in the 1500s know what the land looked like under the ice cap?
Unless he was copying from a much older map, a map made by a civilization that lived
there before it froze, a civilization that called Antarctica Atlantis. The Anunnaki theory says Antarctica was the main base of operations for the Watchers, the Igigi. It was the control room of the planet.
When the Great Flood happened caused by the shifting of the poles or a space impact, the continent was flash frozen. The cities, the pyramids, and the technology were buried instantly.
But they were not destroyed. They were preserved. Antarctica
is the only continent on Earth protected by a unified global treaty.
No military activity, no private exploration, no mining.
Why? Why did the nations of the world who fight over every drop of oil in the Middle East agree to leave the most resource-rich continent completely alone? Because they are guarding something. In 2016, something strange happened.
A parade of very important people made sudden, unannounced trips to the South Pole. John Kerry, the US Secretary of State, went on election day. Buzz Aldrin, the Apollo astronaut, went.
He had to be evacuated for medical reasons.
There was a persistent rumor that he posted a picture of a pyramid with the caption, "We are all in danger."
It is evil itself. But the most significant visit was by Patriarch Kirill, the head of the Russian Orthodox Church.
Why would a religious leader fly to Antarctica to bless a small wooden church in the middle of nowhere?
Whistleblowers claim he wasn't there to bless the penguins.
He was there to perform a ritual over the Ark of Gabriel, a device found in Mecca, in the Middle East, and transported to an Antarctic stasis chamber for safekeeping.
A device that is said to be capable of waking the sleepers. The Book of Enoch describes the punishment of the fallen angels.
It says they were bound in jagged rocks in a place of darkness and burning. It says they are waiting for the day of judgment.
We have interpreted this as a spiritual prison in hell. But what if it is a literal prison in the eyes? The Anunnaki are biological beings.
If they knew a disaster was coming and they couldn't escape in time, they would do the logical thing.
They would go into deep sleep cryogenic suspension. They would build advanced pods that slow down all body functions and go to sleep. They would set the alarm clock for the end of the cycle, for the apocalypse. Now look at the climate data.
The ice is melting.
We are told it is because of CO2, global warming. But what if the heat is coming from below? What if the black pyramids under the ice are powering up?
Heat scans of Antarctica show massive heat signatures beneath the glaciers. The city is waking up, and the beings inside are waking up with it. This is the pre-Adamite civilization. The giants.
The ones with the long, stretched skulls. The ones who engineered us. Why is the 13th Bloodline terrified? Because these beings are not happy. They went to sleep as kings.
They are waking up to find their farm being run by beings
they consider inferior.
They are waking up hungry. The 13th Bloodline needs a massive influx of energy to calm them down. This explains the rush to the South Pole. World leaders are not going there to explore.
They are going there to make deals. They are going to the head office to offer terms of surrender. If the CEO walks out of his office, there is also a theory that the Nazis knew this. Operation High Jump, 1946. Admiral Byrd took an entire naval fleet to Antarctica to fight a hidden enemy. He came back defeated, missing planes and men. He gave an interview saying the next war would be fought by craft that could fly from pole to pole at incredible speed. The Nazis were obsessed with the occult. They searched for real energy. They built bases in New Schwabenland. Did they find the Anunnaki? Did they make a deal?
Is the breakaway civilization, the secret space program, actually a joint project between the military-industrial complex and the frozen exiles of Antarctica? The Antarctica anomaly is the freezer, and we are the food in the pantry. The defrost cycle has begun. The vibrations are rising. The ice is cracking, and when the fallen ones rise, they won't look like demons with pitchforks.
They will look like tall, beautiful, terrifying gods. And they will ask for their throne back. In the next part, we will explore the technology of power. We will look at how they kept us asleep for 6,000 years, astrology, banking, the calendar, and how they used the very cycles of time to harvest our energy.
And why the Gregorian calendar is a spell designed to disconnect you from the universe. If you want to enslave a man physically, you need chains. You need guards. You need food and walls.
It is expensive. It is inefficient.
And eventually, he will try to break free.
But if you want to enslave a man spiritually, you don't need any of that.
You just need to change how he measures time and how he measures value.
If you can disconnect him from the natural rhythm of the universe, and if you can make him chase a resource that doesn't exist, he will build his own prison.
He will guard himself. This is the technology of power, and the 13th Bloodline has perfected it over 6,000 years. Let's look at the calendar. You look at your phone. It says Monday. It says October. You think this is reality,
but it is a spell.
The word calendar comes from the Latin word calens, meaning account book.
It is a tax term.
The current calendar we use, the Gregorian calendar, was put in place by Pope Gregory XIII in 1582.
Why?
To fix the date of Easter?
No, to hide the 13th moon. In nature, time is not a straight line.
It is a cycle. The moon orbits the earth 13 times a year.
28 days times 13 moons equals 364 days, plus 1 day out of time, the day of renewal.
Total, 365.
This is natural time.
It is smooth. It syncs the human body's clock, our monthly cycles, our pregnancy, our sleep rhythms with the cosmos. Every ancient culture used a 13-moon calendar. The Maya, the Egyptians, the Druids. They all knew that the number 13 was the frequency of creation. But the 13th Bloodline, the priest of Roman Babylon, hated this.
They knew that a human living in natural time is intuitive. They are connected to the source. They are hard to control. So they smashed the calendar. They took the 13th moon and broke it apart. They scattered its days. They added days to some months, 31, and took days from others, 30, 28.
They created an unnatural rhythm, 12 months, 60 minutes. This is a mechanical, jagged frequency.
It creates a quiet, constant anxiety in the human brain.
We are always out of time. We are always running late. Why?
Because our bodies are living in natural 13-20 time, but our minds are forced into artificial 12-60 time. This disconnect creates a mental noise that blocks our natural psychic abilities. The Gregorian calendar is a frequency fence.
It was designed to hide the number 13, the number of the bloodline, from common people, making it seem unlucky. While the elite kept a true 13-moon count for their own rituals, they operate on the correct time. You operate on broken time. That is why their rituals work and your prayers seem delayed. Now let's look at money.
In ancient Sumer, the temples invented money.
It was called the shekel.
It represented a specific weight of barley or silver.
It was real. It was energy. But the Babylonian priesthood, the ancestors of the black nobility, invented something else. Usury, interest,
making money from money.
This is the greatest magic trick in history.
It is alchemy, creating gold from nothing. Look at the Federal Reserve note in your pocket.
It says dollar, but it is not a dollar.
It is a debt note. It is an IOU. When the government needs money, it goes to the Federal Reserve, a private company run by 13th Bloodline families. The Fed types numbers into a computer. They create money out of thin air. They lend it to the government with interest.
But here is the trap. They create the main amount, but they do not create the interest.
If I lend you $100 and ask for $115 back, where does the extra $15 come from? It doesn't exist.
You have to take it from someone else, or I have to lend you more. This creates a mathematical impossibility. The debt grows forever. It can never be fully paid back. The entire global economy is a game of musical chairs designed to fail.
Why?
Because bankruptcy is the harvest.
When the debt cycle crashes as they plan for it to the lenders, the 13th Bloodline take back the real things.
They take the land. They take the houses.
They take the factories. They trade their fake paper for your real sweat.
This is how they own the world.
They don't buy it. They foreclose on it. This system is not just economics. It is Babylonian magic.
The word money comes from the river Manna. The word currency comes from current, like electricity or water flow. The word bank comes from the river bank, where the current flows.
They are channeling energy.
Your labor, your life force, is turned into a digital signal money and funneled up the pyramid to the top. The 13th line.
They are not just rich. They are energy vampires. They use the banking system to drain the life force of 8 billion people to power their own world. While you work 40 hours a week to pay interest on a credit card, you are literally feeding the beast. And finally, astrology. Scientists tell you astrology is fake science, a joke.
The stars don't affect you. Yet JSB, Morgan, a front man for the 13th line, famously said, "Millionaires don't use astrology. Billionaires do." Why?
Because the 13th Bloodline knows the clock of the universe.
They know that history moves in cycles.
The cycle of Mars war. The cycle of Saturn restriction. The cycle of Jupiter growth. They don't start a war whenever they feel like it. They wait for the transit of Mars. They don't crash the stock market randomly. They wait for the position of Saturn.
They surf the waves of cosmic energy.
When the tide is going out, they sell.
When the tide is coming in, they buy.
Because they have the almanac. They hold the ancient Sumerian star charts, the Enuma, Anu, Enlil.
They know when the portals open. They schedule their rituals, their coronations, and their sacrifices to the exact minute. Meanwhile, they teach the masses that astrology is just fortune-telling.
They keep you blind to the weather while they hold the umbrella. This is the invisible prison. There are no bars. There are no guards.
There is only a clock on the wall and a bank account on your phone.
You run on their treadmill, chasing their carrot, watching their clock.
You are a battery plugged into their system. And for 6,000 years, the system has worked perfectly. The sheep shear themselves, but the machine is overheating. The debt bubble has reached $300 trillion. It is mathematically impossible to keep going. The calendar spell is breaking.
People are waking up to how unnatural and rushed modern life is.
The 13th Bloodline knows a crash is coming.
In fact, they are planning it. They are preparing the Great Reset not to free us, but to move us from a soft prison debt to a hard prison digital control. They want to replace the dollar with the CBDC central bank digital currency.
Programmable money.
Money that expires if you don't spend it fast enough. Money that shuts off if your social score drops.
This is the final lock on the door.
But to close that lock, they need a crisis.
They need a war. They need a collapse. They need us to be so terrified that we beg them for the digital cage.
This brings us to the next chapter, the War of the Blood.
We will explore the ancient fight between the two factions of the Anunnaki, Enlil and Enki, the globalists versus the nationalists, the technocrats versus the religious rulers.
It looks like a political war, but it is a family feud.
And we are the soldiers on their chessboard. In the next part, we will analyze the blood war. Who is fighting who?
Is there a good faction of the elite? Or is it just two wolves fighting over a sheep?
We look at the world and we see chaos. We see East versus West, left versus right,
religion versus science. We think these are random fights over oil, land, or beliefs.
But what if they are not random?
What if they are moves on a chessboard?
And what if the people moving the pieces are not human? The Sumerian texts describe a big split in the Anunnaki leadership, a rivalry between two brothers.
Enlil and Enki.
Enlil was the commander, the lord of the air, the strict one. He saw humans as dangerous animals. He wanted to keep the population small, obedient, and dumb.
He is the God of the Old Testament Yahweh, who demands fear and obedience.
Enki was the scientist, the lord of the earth, the geneticist.
He created us. He loved his creation in a twisted way.
He wanted to give us knowledge, the serpent in the garden.
He is the model for Lucifer, the light bringer, or Prometheus. This family feud didn't end when the Anunnaki withdrew.
It continued through their bloodlines. The 13th Bloodline is not one united group.
It is split into two factions.
The Order of Enlil versus the Order of Enki. The Bible encodes this as the story of Cain and Seth. Cain, the farmer, the builder of cities, represents the Enki faction.
The mark of Cain is not a curse. It is the cross of the Rosicrucians, the red cross, the mark of the initiated.
The descendants of Cain are the smiths, the masons, the builders, the technologists.
They are the technocrats. They want to lift humanity through technology, merging man with machine. Transhumanism to challenge the gods.
This is Silicon Valley. This is the transhumanist agenda. They believe we can become gods. Seth, the replacement for Abel, represents the Enlil faction. The sons of Seth are the priests, the shepherds, the traditional keepers of the law. They are the theocrats.
They want to keep humanity in submission to a higher power god, state king.
This is the Vatican.
This is the monarchy. This is the old world order.
They believe we must serve the gods. For 6,000 years, these two factions have been fighting a proxy war.
The Enlil faction globalists and theocrats wants a strict hierarchy,
a shepherd and a flock,
a feudal system. They built the Catholic Church. They built the monarchies of Europe. They want to reduce the population to a manageable number like the Georgia Guidestones suggest, 500 million, and rule over a calm, peaceful world. The Enki faction nationalists and technocrats wants a chaotic, high-energy meritocracy. They built the United States, the New Atlantis. They built the Masonic republics. They want to grow the population, speed up technology, and storm the gates of heaven. Look at World War II.
It wasn't just allies versus axes. It was a clash of occult orders.
The Nazis, the Thule Society, were obsessed with real energy and Aryan purity.
That is the Enlil faction, seeking the pure, disciplined, perfect human. The Allies, the Masons, were obsessed with freedom and technology. That is the Enki faction, seeking liberation and atomic power. Look at the world today. The globalist elite, the Enlil faction, are pushing for the Great Reset.
They want to shut down farms. They want to stop us from eating meat.
They want to put us in 15-minute cities.
Why? Because Enlil hates the noise.
He wants a quiet, orderly zoo.
The technocratic elite, the Enki faction, led by figures like Elon Musk, though he plays both sides, are pushing for Mars, for Neuralink, for AI. They want to break the quarantine. They want to turn humans into cyborgs so we can survive the coming cosmic shift. This is the blood war.
It is not good versus evil. It is shepherd versus wolf. The shepherd Enlil wants to shear you slowly and eventually eat you. The wolf Enki wants to set you free so you can hunt alongside him, but you might still get eaten. Why does this matter to you?
Because they are both recruiting. The Enlil faction offers safety.
Obey the rules.
Take the shot. Stay in your pod, and you will be safe. The Enki faction offers power.
Upload your mind. Buy the crypto. Merge with the AI.
And you will become a god. Both are traps.
Both led to the same place, slavery.
One is slavery of the body feudalism. The other is slavery of the soul digital simulation.
The 13th Bloodline is fighting over who gets to own the farm. But the farm is waking up. The sheep are realizing they outnumber the dogs.
And there is a third player entering the game, something neither Enlil nor Enki expected.
The human spirit. In the next part, we will explore the return of the gods. We will look at the signs that the parents are coming back to stop the kids from fighting. The UFO disclosure, the Pentagon reports, the sudden interest in non-human intelligence.
Are the Anunnaki returning to settle the score? Or is Project Bluebeam the final card in the deck? For 70 years, they told us we were crazy. They told us UFOs were swamp gas, weather balloons, or optical illusions. If you saw a light in the sky, you were made fun of.
You lost your job.
You were silenced.
And then suddenly, the script flipped. The Pentagon releases videos. The Navy confirms unidentified aerial phenomena.
Congress holds hearings.
Former presidents go on talk shows and say there are things in the sky, and we don't know how they move.
Why?
Why the sudden honesty?
Do you really think the government grew a conscience?
Or are they preparing the public for something? The 13th Bloodline operates on a schedule. They know the Great Cycle is ending.
The magnetic poles are shifting. The sun is entering a grand minimum.
And the masters are returning. The Sumerian texts describe Nibiru, the crossing planet, not just as a planet, but as a ferry. A cosmic bus that brings the Anunnaki back to their colony every 3,600 years. The last time they came, the Bronze Age collapsed.
Now they are due again, but the 13th Bloodline has a problem.
If the Anunnaki just show up, humanity will panic.
Or worse, we will fight back.
We have nukes now. We have advanced energy weapons.
We are not the primitive tribes of 2000 BC, so the elite need a story.
They need to control the first contact, enter Project Bluebeam. This is the theory that the alien invasion will not be physical.
It will be psychological. It will be a hologram. Using satellites, ionizing the atmosphere, and using 5 grams towers as projectors, they can create a massive, realistic image in the sky.
Imagine the clouds part. A giant mothership appears over New York, London, Moscow.
Or perhaps a religious figure, Jesus for the Christians, Krishna for the Hindus, the Mahdi for the Muslims. And using voice to skull technology, VTK, they can beam words directly into your head.
Be not afraid.
We are your creators.
We have returned to save you from yourselves. It sounds like science fiction, but the technology exists. We have had holograms since the 1970s. We have had directed audio since the 1990s.
Why would they do this?
To create a one-world government. Ronald Reagan said it openly at the UN. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. The 13th Bloodline wants to erase borders,
erase currencies, erase religions. They want a global plantation managed by a single heir. And the only way to get 8 billion people to agree to that is to give them a common enemy, alien invaders, or a common savior, space brothers. But there is a darker possibility.
What if the invasion is real, but it's not an invasion? What if it's a harvest? The Gnostics warned us about the Archons.
They said they feed on our fear and our souls. If the Anunnaki are returning, they are not coming to give us free energy.
They are coming to check the livestock.
They are coming to see if the gold has been mined, if the population is ready.
The 13th Bloodline, the farm managers, are terrified of this performance review. They have poisoned the planet.
They have let the livestock get too smart. They are scrambling to look busy.
That is why they are building bunkers.
That is why they are hoarding resources. They are preparing to hide while the gods call the herd. Look at the Vatican.
They have an observatory in Arizona on Mount Graham.
They built a specialized infrared telescope named Lucifer Large Binocular Telescope, near infrared utility with camera and integral field unit for extragalactic research.
Yes, really.
Why is the Pope looking for extraterrestrial relatives?
Why has the Vatican said that aliens are our brothers and do not carry original sin?
Because they know who is coming. They are preparing the theology for the new God, a biological God, a flesh and blood being that will walk out of a ship and demand worship. The 13th Bloodline is setting the stage. They are like John the Baptist for the Antichrist.
Prepare the way of the Lord, but this Lord doesn't bring peace. He brings a branding iron. Do not look at the holograms.
Do not listen to the voice in your head.
The Savior coming from the sky is a trick. The only true salvation is inside.
And that is the one place they don't want you to look. In the next part, we will explore the awakening. Why is their magic failing?
Why is the heartbeat of the Earth spiking of the charts? We will explain the gamma wave theory.
The universe itself is sending a signal to wake up the DNA.
And the 13th Bloodline can't block it. Have you felt it? The ringing in your ears. The vivid dreams.
The feeling that time is speeding up. You are not going crazy.
You are upgrading. For 6,000 years, the 13th Bloodline has kept humanity in a frequency prison.
They used the moon matrix.
They used the broken 12-month calendar. They used fear.
They kept the Earth's vibration low 7.83 Hz, the theta state of light hypnosis. As long as we stayed in theta, we were easy to suggest to.
We were asleep, but the prison has a flaw. The Earth is not a dead rock. It is a living being.
And it is moving into a new area of the galaxy, one filled with high-energy gamma rays. Look at the Schumann resonance, the electromagnetic heartbeat of the planet.
For thousands of years, it was steady at 7.83 Hz.
But in 2012, it started to spike. 12 Hz, 30 Hz, 100 Hz.
Science can't fully explain it.
But the ancient calendars predicted it. The Maya called it the end of the long count.
The Hindus called it the end of the Kali Yuga. The veil is thinning. The 13th Bloodline is terrified because their magic relies on low frequency. They feed on fear, which vibrates very slowly. But gamma waves 40 Hz and above are the frequency of insight, brilliance, and love. You cannot hypnotize someone who is vibrating in gamma. The signal keeps breaking up. This is why their stories are failing.
Have you noticed?
Their lies don't stick anymore. The media screams, "Be afraid,"
and people just scroll past. They try to start a race war and people refuse to fight. They try to launch a new pandemic and people just laugh.
The spell is broken. The magic illusion of authority has worn off.
We look at our politicians, our bankers, our celebrities, and we don't see gods.
We see old, sick, desperate criminals.
We see the man behind the curtain. The 13th Bloodline knows this.
That is why they are rushing the Great Reset.
That is why they are desperate to put chips in our brains, transhumanism. Because our biology is waking up. Our junk DNA is unzipping.
The God Code is coming online.
Spontaneous healings are increasing. Telepathy is returning. How often do you think of someone and they call right at that moment?
The internet was just a training wheels version of the new kind of connection, the planetary mind, we are all naturally part of. We are not just fighting a political war. We are fighting a frequency war. And we are winning.
Every time you choose love over fear, you raise the amplitude. Every time you turn off the news and walk in nature, you sync with the earth.
Every time you refuse to hate your neighbor, you starve the archons. The Anunnaki are powerful.
They have technology we can't imagine, but they lack one thing: connection to the source.
They are cut off.
They are batteries running on 1% charge. We are plugged directly into the galactic center. We have infinite power.
We just forgot how to turn it on. But the switch has been flipped. The golden age is not something they give us.
It is something we become.
The 13th Bloodline is trying to leave.
They are building rockets to Mars Elon Starship. They are building bunkers in New Zealand.
They are packing their bags.
They know the lease is up. The landlord Gaia is evicting the tenants who trashed the house.
And the rightful owners, humanity, are remembering who they really are. In the final chapter, we will make the final revelation. We will reveal the ultimate secret of the human race.
We are not slaves.
We are not accidents.
We are royalty.
And the 13th Bloodline was just keeping the seat warm. We have traveled a long road. We started in the mud of Eridu. We walked through the temples of Babylon. We walked through the cold corridors of the black nobility.
We looked at the chains on our wrists, the debt, the broken time, the poison, the lies.
And we asked why.
Why go to all this trouble for a slave race?
If we're just monkeys with shoes, why do the gods need to watch us 24/7?
Why do they need to poison our food, scramble our frequency, and police our thoughts? You don't put high-tech security on a garbage dump. You put it on a vault. The Anunnaki didn't tell us the whole truth in the Sumerian tablets.
Enki was a geneticist, a collector.
When he came to Earth, he didn't just want a worker.
He wanted to build a biological library.
He took the DNA of the original Earth primate: strength, vitality, connection to Gaia.
He mixed it with the DNA of the Anunnaki: intelligence, love, life, psychic power.
But he didn't stop there. Occult theory suggests the human genome contains sequences from dozens of other galactic species. We are not just a hybrid. We are the cosmic ark. We are the royal jelly of the universe. The 13th Bloodline, the pure Anunnaki descendants, are powerful. Yes, but they are stagnant. They are an old operating system. They haven't evolved into 141,000 years. They are trapped in their own repeating rituals. They have hit a genetic dead end.
That is why they are dying. That is why they need the starfire and the blood.
But you aren't you.
You are unpredictable. You are rapidly evolving.
You possess something they lost long ago.
The divine spark.
The direct connection to the source. The ability to create reality, not just manage it. They are not our kings.
They are our managers.
And they are terrified of the day the company owner walks in.
That owner is you. Think about the harvest.
Why do they harvest our fear, our life force? Because they cannot create it themselves.
They are parasites.
We are the host.
Without us, they starve. Without them, we flourish.
The entire system of control is designed to stop you from realizing one simple fact: that the lion is scared of the sheep. The 13th Bloodline has spent 6,000 years convincing you that you are weak,
sinful, broken, and that you need a savior.
A government, a bank, a god.
They projected their own hierarchy onto the stars.
But look at the crown. Where is the crown? It is on their head.
But where does the power of the crown come from?
It comes from the agreement of the people. If we stop believing in the crown, it becomes just a fancy hat. If we stop believing in the debt, it becomes just paper. If we stop believing in the fear, they become just old men in a room. The Great Awakening is not about fighting them. Fighting them feeds them. War is their favorite food.
The awakening is about outgrowing them.
It is about vibrating at a frequency where they cannot reach you.
When you move into the heart 528 Hz, you become invisible to the predator. You exit the game. So what is the final choice?
They are offering you a new cage, the metaverse, the neural link, the transhumanist dream. They want to merge you with a machine to lock your soul down forever, to turn you into a permanent battery.
That is option C.
Option B is to claim your inheritance, to realize that the junk DNA inside you is the scroll of the true king, to realize that you don't need to be saved. You just need to remember the Anunnaki are leaving, or they are hiding.
The ice is melting.
The veil is lifting.
The guardians are stepping down, and the children of Earth are inheriting the estate. Do not look for the 13th bloodline in the shadows anymore. Look in the mirror. The blood in your veins is red. It is iron. It is magnetic.
It is alive. It is the blood of the 14th bloodline, the one that was never meant to survive, but did. The one that will write the next chapter of the galaxy. The king is dead. Long live the human.